Thank you for joining me for another episode of Keeping It Real with America's Supermom. I am excited to have my next guest. I have Dr. Sarabeth Berk here today. We actually got acquainted on Clubhouse. I believe I heard her speak, and she was just saying all this good, juicy stuff. I said, "Hey, I need to have you on my podcast because, that is what it's like on Clubhouse. You have these mic drop moments, just a few seconds. There's people on stage and other people have questions, and you just really want to be able to take that time to talk to them one on one. So I'm so excited and honored to have her here today because the topics that she discussed are really just game changers, I think, in terms of women and just being able to have these transparent conversations that really can help you be a better version of yourself. So I could go on for hours, but I'm going to stop there and give the opportunity for Sarah Beth to kind of introduce herself. Tell us a little bit about her before we get into some questions.
This is so exciting. I love that we met on Clubhouse. It has expanded my world just like it has for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, so just a quick background, brief bio on me. I'm Sarah Beth. I've become this leading expert on something I call hybrid professional identity. So I
Mhm.
wrote a book, which is more than my title, because I never really felt I knew where I fit in the workforce. I would struggle to answer that question, what do you do? And that resulted in me really reflecting on what is my professional identity? Like, how do I describe who I am, not just what I do?
Mhm.
And that eventually led me to this notion that people wear a lot of hats. We can be Jacks and Jills of all trade, but some people are doing something different that they actually integrate. They're working at the intersection of two or more of those identities. And I call that hybridity. So when I had
Mhm.
this revelation about myself, I was like, wait a second, I can actually be multiple identities. And that's my gift. That's my best self. How do I talk about this and share this? So I help people brand their professional identity and find their hybridity, which really is their unique value prop and changes the way they navigate their careers. So
I
that's a little bit about me.
I love that. What comes to mind for me is I've talked to people about the importance of compounding what it is that you do so that you can evolve. So imagine someone who hasn't been a marathon runner. They train for a marathon. However, on that journey and completing that goal, they evolve into a different person. So they learn different things about themselves. They master things, and so they started out being one way, and over time through their journey, they turned into something else. And so a lot of people have the challenge with pursuing the goals. They obtain the goals, but not only with those goals being obtained, they've grown and mastered in some areas, and they just don't know how to
Mm,
really express that.
yes. Well, who are we is the big question. And I love the analogy of the marathon running and the training because the person you are when you start isn't the person you are when you finish.
Hmm.
And that is us, that compound idea of we are evolving, we are dynamic. The way you see me is going to be different than the way my coworkers see me. But yet, how do I see myself? And these are
Hmm.
questions like literally, I ask people, what is your professional identity? And it's like they've never thought of it. They don't have an answer. They'll tell me skills. They're like, well, I do some marketing and sales. I'm like, that's not an identity. And they go,
Hmm.
oh. And just because you do sales, are you a salesperson? Sometimes people call themselves a storyteller or an idea navigator. And you're like, that's different. That has a different way of carrying yourself. And it promotes a different truth about who you are. So, identity is something I think people need to know as part of your career development, and you get to define it. And you need to know who you are beyond your job title.
I love that because that was something that I struggled with. I went through depression
Mm,
throughout my journey, and it was being really attached to the roles that I played.
yes.
And each role had a different mask, so to speak. I was covering up whatever I was inadequate with in one area underneath this mask while I was doing these different tasks or jobs and things like that. So, how does someone first kind of get out of that realm of that attachment to the title and
Hmm.
their value?
I love that you use the word attachment. It's so true. We derive a lot of our self worth from our job titles. And look at what's going on right now with COVID. So many people have lost their jobs or out of work.
Mhm.
They've also lost their self-esteem and self-confidence because they don't know who they are. It's an identity crisis moment, literally.
Mhm. Mhm.
And yet we don't always use that language. We say you're burned out or you're just lost or you'll find your way. And we're like, no, let's talk about an identity crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it is sort of that mindset shift of wait a second, who am I? What do I care about? And what do I want to be? Who do I want to become? So
Mhm.
the first step, answering your question, I have people go through this professional identity word list. I've got a free handout on my website if people want it, because most people are stuck in the boxes. Okay, I've called myself a strategist. I've called myself a coach. I've called myself a director of sales. And I'm like, there are all kinds of words you can be using. Let's look at some new words to inspire you. So when
Mhm.
people look at this list of like 100 words, they go, I have them circle as many as they want. Which ones resonate? Which ones are you? And they'll
Mhm.
circle 20 or 30 and be like, wow, I didn't know I was all these things, or wow, I didn't know I could call myself these things. And then the process after that is we narrow it back down because I say you have primary and then you have secondary identities. So you're
Mhm.
not using all these professional identities all day, every day, right? That would be nuts. Yeah. And then you have ones that are your favorite and you love having, and you have ones that are like, that's okay. I don't really care if people don't know me that way. So
Mhm.
then we sort of prioritize and narrow to the ones I say that really light you up, are your best like expertise, and you want to be known for. So that's
Mhm.
sort of the first step of this work.
I love that because, I was talking to someone earlier on a call and I was explaining kind of that concept that sometimes even the titles
Yeah.
or the words that we use, we've kind of outgrown them. They don't serve us, or, like I never saw myself as an author. When I was a kid, I thought, oh, I'm not good in English. And, that's just something that I didn't aspire for.
Mhm.
So it kind of stopped me from writing, but now that I'm an author, that doesn't mean what I thought it meant.
I love
It's just
that.
like telling my story.
Mhm.
So I love that you mentioned that because a lot of times we don't explore what these words do for us or don't do for us.
100%. Yeah, I'm so
Mhm.
on board with that.
Yeah,
'Cause-
so I think that
yeah,
is great. So I think, so once we kind of get to the point of diving in with these descriptions and things, what would be the next step? Because,
yeah,
if you've kind of built your life around what you quote unquote thought was who you are in
yes.
terms of the role and how you fit in and things that you do and your routines and habits, how do
Mhm.
we begin to comfortably walk away and begin to define something different?
Yeah, so first, I use this tool called like a professional identity validation tool because
Mhm.
you need to kind of make sure like which identities are me. So there's four questions that we look at. One is, what do other people call you? How do they see you? What words are they using about you, right?
Mhm.
Like people used to call me a design thinking specialist. I was like, okay, that's interesting. But then the other question is, do I see myself that way?
Mm,
And so you ask, what do other people call me? And then what do I call myself? What identities do I think I have? So that's the external and the internal validation.
mm,
And the other two questions are unconscious and conscious. So unconscious is, who am I when I'm in that state of flow in work? So when you're doing things in work that you just are losing track of time, it's effortless, it's joyful, and you're like, whoa, like that was great. Who are you in that moment? Are you the strategist or the designer, right? That's coming into like realizing the unconscious. Then the conscious question is, how do I call myself when I'm in my greatest areas of expertise? Like, what are those names? Like, am I an expert in being an artist? Am I an expert in web design? So, when you map those four questions, how people see you, how you see yourself, who you are in flow, and what you call your areas of greatest expertise and work, you can start to look which words, which identities are common or consistent across those four questions. I
mhm,
think that's really important because that's one way to just test, okay, which identity should I move forward with? And I want to use more of. And
mm,
also, this is really key. This is so simple. People don't know what to call you unless you use the language you want to be seen for. So, in my hybrid title, by the way, is a creative disruptor. It's a title I invented for
mm,
myself because of one of my next processes using a Venn diagram and like, who am I at the intersection?
mm.
Until I started calling myself a creative disruptor, nobody else was going to. I
Right.
I had to start telling people, this is how I see myself. then it caught
Mhm.
on. People are like, oh, that's Sarah Beth. She's a creative disruptor. It means something. So
Mhm.
that's just one of those little
Mhm.
things. Like we just assume people will know. They don't know.
Mhm. I love that. And now, so walk us through the whole point of, you have this title that you've coined and created,
Yeah.
and other people don't understand that. So,
Yeah.
how do we, because sometimes people get attached to that
Hmm.
title that's different
Yeah.
and they miscommunicate what value they bring.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
because somebody doesn't understand our title, then we're like feeling worthless because we forget how to communicate the problem or the message that we're trying to share, with the title. So how do we
yeah.
get out of that?
Yeah, I think
That
most people
question makes sense.
oh, completely. People shy away, I think, from giving themselves a title or using an identity because they really don't know what to call themselves. So they're like, let me just tell you about what I do, what problems I solve. So I have a three-part elevator pitch that works really well.
Mm-hmm.
First, it's starting with just saying like your name. And if you have your title, like a hybrid title, you say that. And then, so I would say, I'm Sarah Beth and I'm a creative disruptor because, and this is part two, because I work at the intersection of being an artist, designer, researcher, and educator. So I go for my hybrid title, and then I say what I'm at the intersections of with my professional identities. And that's from the unfamiliar level to familiar, right? We don't know creative disruptor, but we do know artist, designer, educator. Then the third part, though, is the relationships between the identities. Who am I at the intersection of the artist, designer, researcher, educator? I have to give a one sentence explanation. So here's my full pitch.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Sarah Beth. I'm a creative disruptor. And that's because I work at the intersection of being an artist, designer, researcher, and educator, which enables me to create innovation strategies that radically connect people and resources in new ways. Tell me more about you. And like what that does, Rochelle, is it hits all the things our brain wants. Our brain loves novelty. So that's the creative disruptor. Like, I don't know, that's unexpected. But then the brain wants to make sense of it. So I tell you the familiar things. And then I give an explanation of what it means. So you have this like picture. And then it usually leads to more inquiry, more questions, more stories. People get to see me the way I want to be seen, as opposed to here, I'm Sarah Beth, and here's my job title.
I love that. And and that is just so important in terms of framing your own story,
Yeah.
setting the scene for your story, all these different things. And how do you get people to have that confidence to do that? Because, when we're networking, it's like, okay, we've got this pitch. And then, there's a lot of anxiety
Mhm.
around being different rather than saying what everybody else says. But if you
Mhm.
say what everybody else says, you're going to get what everybody else gets and nobody remembers you.
Your questions are so spot on. It's amazing. So, what we've been talking about the last few minutes, I'm jumping around a bit. I have a five-step process. So, the
Okay.
earlier steps are like, who are you? Let's validate your professional identities. Let's brainstorm. Now that we know your identities, we put them into a Venn diagram to look at the intersections. And then on the other side, we brand it. And then it's about owning it. So, step five is the confidence, right? If you
Mhm.
don't believe in yourself, if you can't explain your hybrid title, then it's never going to work. You've got to be able to get out there. And one of my favorite concepts I've borrowed from Marilyn Brewer, she's a sociologist. She says, people want to stand out and fit in simultaneously, right? It's what you just explained. If you
Mhm.
sound like everybody else, you're going to get what everybody else gets. But how are you distinct? So she coined a phrase called optimal distinctiveness. And I think
Mhm.
that's what your hybrid professional identity does. So my hybrid professional identity is this creative disruptor. It's, it doesn't fit into anything, but I get
Mhm.
to share how I want to plug it into society. And it's because I go from telling my hybrid title and then connecting it back to the familiar, the artist, researcher, designer, it
Mhm.
blends both sides. I will say a hybrid title, though, people have to base it in their truth. It has to come from what you have stories
Mhm.
about and work evidence from. Like you have to back it up. Because if
Mhm.
I just call myself like a coding guru, I don't know how to code. I am not a guru. Like it's not real. It's just catchy or cool. And
Right.
so the process when I do it with people gets to all of that. It pulls out the stories and the examples from your own work history, that we then find your identities from that, and then we find the hybridity. So it all maps together.
I love that. And, to me, it's like a affirmation in your title, because
Mhm.
creative, it's like, that's this affirming every day that that's what you do. And it just kind of continues to have that flow and energy. So this is awesome. Now, I mean, those are some golden nuggets, I think, for a lot of people that, are dealing with their identity, not just in the workforce, but just
Mhm.
in general. Because, as women, we have the identity of being a mom and taking care of your kids. Well, then they grow up and move out, and then you've empty nestles. So there's so many transitions that we do all the time. What are some things that we can do to kind of keep us grounded in spite of the transitions that happen around us in our industries and things like that, so that we can continue to keep that momentum?
Oh, that's a great question because I felt that a lot. So I'm one of those people that it's changed jobs every 3 to 4 years, not because I didn't love the work. It really was just an identity fit. Like I wasn't being seen for all the value I brought. Part
Mhm.
of me was being compartmentalized. And for someone who's a hybrid, and here's my definition of a hybrid, it's a professional who has multiple professional identities, but works at the intersection, meaning they integrate. They're not just wearing a lot of hats.
Mhm.
So I'm not just sometimes an artist and sometimes the educator. I literally merge them. It's like a recipe. You're taking your
Mm.
best ingredients of yourself and making something delicious, and that's you. But if you just tell
Mhm.
me go back and be an ingredient, I'm going to get bored of that job or disengaged. So I've changed jobs a lot until I realized there are hybrid jobs out there. There are jobs that are going to hire me because I'm the combination. And that permission to be all of my top identities is what makes me more excited about the work I do. So
That's awesome.
to your point of the groundedness, here's what came up for me. I've noticed in my research, most people are going to change what they say to the what do you do question depending on who they're talking to, what time of day, what setting, right? Because
Mhm.
we want to fit in. We want to be that right sort of connection with that person in the moment. When you find your hybridity, though, and like being a creative disruptor, that's my groundedness. I'm not changing that anymore.
Mhm.
I'm going to show up in professional settings and use that again and again and again, even if I work in a full-time job and my job title is changing, the creative disruptor stays the same. Now,
Mm.
one caveat, your hybridity can change too, right? Maybe in 5 years, my hybridity is a different combination of my professional identities. That's okay. But I can let it be as consistent for as long as it feels like the true me. So
Mm.
that's how I would answer that.
That's good. Now, so what are some things that you do to keep you somewhat in the trailblazer mindset? Because, whether it's books or podcasts, because,
Yeah.
this isn't normal. And even for women, especially, it's like, oh, well, I have to do this. I can't really express who I am, or I don't want to tell them I have kids because they might think that I'm not loyal. I mean, I could go into a number of things that we get kind of put into a box with, and maybe some people say them or not, but we just feel
Uh-huh.
like we have to prove ourselves. So
Oh,
how do you protect your independence and confidence? What are some things you do in your daily routine?
I'm going to have to think about that because I think it's going to be different for each of us. And
Mhm.
especially, I focus on professional identity, work life. And so everyone's work situation is a little different. But you're making me think of a group. I gave a speech to Tate and Zoe. They're
Mhm.
this really cool gift giving company. And they have their team is a lot of working moms or stay at home moms that also are representatives for Tate and Zoe. And so they're going out into the community and sharing these gifts that you can buy from the company, and the question was like, how do they blend the mom identity in with the marketing and the networking they need to do?
Mhm.
And that's part of these intersections, right? So I'd say draw a Venn diagram. That's there. That's my habit and trick. Draw a
Mhm.
Venn diagram. And if being a mom is a really important identity to you, put that as one of the labels in one of the circles. And then the two other circles should be the other professional identities that you really care about, you want to be known for. By the way, two is the minimum amount of circles for your Venn diagram, and four is the max. If you build a bigger Venn diagram, it's too many circles. And so then you get to say, okay, who am I as a combination of being like a mom and an author and I don't know, a designer or whatever these
Mhm.
core identities are. And that is the beautiful question of you need to start telling those stories of how the three weave together. And when you
Mhm.
see the mom identity showing up in the author part of your life or the author showing up in the mom part of your life, if you can highlight those moments and tell them to people to show this is why and what it looks like and what makes you great when they combine, I think that's a good way to play with this.
That's awesome. Yeah, very good. I mean, that's a great suggestion for people who are trying to find content on social media.
Yeah.
It's being able to capture that in a picture or, just the verbiage on a caption. So that is awesome.
Yeah,
So,
that overlap.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so how did you get on Clubhouse? What was it that got you on that platform?
I mean, like a lot of us, it was like a friend that referred me, and I showed up one day. I was like, "What is this thing?" And it takes a little bit to like find what you gravitate to, but eventually there were a few voices that I kept returning to their rooms. I was like, "This
Hmm.
person's really interesting," and a few of them we met offline. We had phone calls and just got to know each other. And eventually, Todd McLeese and I really just hit it off. He's like, "I'm running these rooms. Do you want to be a guest one day?" And I was a guest, and the room went great. He's like, "We should do that weekly." And it was just one of those like one thing led to another. And we started, we've mostly done it weekly. Maybe we miss a few weeks, but it's
Hmm.
become really a way where I get to hear how people respond to this idea of being a hybrid because it's new. Like that's my trailblazer. I'm trying to get the word out for something that hasn't yet existed. The
Hmm.
irony is this has been part of the workforce forever, but we've
Hmm.
used other terms because we haven't had the right language. People usually say,
Hmm.
I'm a polymath, I'm multi-talented, I'm multi-passionate, I'm a gig worker, I'm a jack of all trades. Like we know that language, but what does that mean? Those
Hmm.
terms actually just mean many. Poly is many, multi is many, right?
Hmm.
The word we really needed was about integration between.
Hmm.
When you're between two things at the same time, there literally is no language for that.
Hmm.
That's why I call it hybrid. When you're in that space, you're a combination that's a hybrid of the other two. And if you come up with a title for it, like a hybrid title, great. But at a minimum, people just need to be able to know, oh, hybrid is the thing I've been trying to say, not jack of all trades,
Hmm.
not generalist, not these other things. So I know I drifted a little bit on that, but I
Yeah, that
feel
was awesome.
Clubhouse has just shown me this idea matters. People are feeling it and didn't know what to say.
Yeah, I love that because, you have in these spaces that you curate that you get that authentic conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because people feel like they can't see you, but they're able to really express what's really on their heart. And I mean, just the knowledge and the case studies and the information that you can acquire in these stages in real time. I mean, it's just awesome. It can be addictive.
Yeah, it is addictive. I don't people like never get off of that platform. I don't know how they do it.
I know there's like all-nighter rooms. When I first got on, I fell asleep on some of those rooms because they were like all-nighter. I wake up and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, they're still
Yeah, you're still talking.
So, walk us through writing a book, that
Mhm.
process, because many people feel like, okay, I have this information, but, how do you go through that process? Did you have that identity about, oh, am I even, author material to even write this? What was that journey like?
Oh yeah, I had all the imposter. What am I going to say? How do I say it? First, one of my stumbling blocks, I was very academic. So I have my PhD. This was my dissertation research. How
Mhm,
do I shift from an academic scholar voice to something more like
mhm,
social and personable? Because the two don't work. So I
mhm,
had to like find that. I talked to a lot of authors that I kind of met through my own networks, asking how did they publish their book? What was it like to kind of get tools and advice? And I really wanted to get a book deal. I wrote a query letter. I was trying to get an agent. And I got feedback from a few agents that were interested, but they said, you need a platform. Until you have 10,000 followers, we are not even considering you. And I was like, I don't know how to get 10,000 followers. I don't even know what I'm doing. So I learned quickly that there are like three tiers of publishing. There's the big five houses, the Random House, Penguin, whatever. And that's you really do need a platform.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle are like independent publishers, and at the bottom is self-publishing. And I don't mean to say like high to bottom, it's just
Mm-hmm.
that's the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when you have an idea you care so much about, you're like, I'm going to get this out there no matter what. And that's how I felt. I was really determined. And I did the independent publishing route. So I had a woman who has a small publishing label, and she worked with me. And once we set a deadline and a time frame, I stuck to it. I was like, this is make or break. Like, I'm not going to let this train just keep going. So I made that own commitment in my head. And it took me 5 years from the time I finished my dissertation and defended to getting the book out, because A, I needed a break from writing, and B, I needed to keep doing more research. So testing my ideas and like, do people even care? And what am I trying to say? So I was doing little speaking things or little coffee meetings, and slowly but surely I was getting more confidence in my topic. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was the way. Everyone does it differently. I've seen, sharing things on Twitter or writing blog posts and getting engagement. For me, it was testing in real life. And when it started to click and people were attending more things I did, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready. And also, I created worksheets of this process I was describing before, the professional therapies and the Venn diagram.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched people do the steps to try and understand their own hybridity, that was learning and research. Like, that helped me write the book,
Mm-hmm.
because I saw what questions people had and where they got stuck. And I was like, oh, okay, I need to put this in there. So
Mm-hmm.
the book, I really started writing seriously in November of 2019. And I had my manuscript finished by January, February, went through editing February, March, and it came out in April of 2020. So it was fast. I feel
That
like,
is awesome.
yeah.
I love that. And I love the steps that you talked about going through there, doing the research, getting the case studies, because so often people feel like, oh, I'm just going to put it out there, you
Yeah,
know, depending on what type of book it is. I think that's important.
totally.
So I love that you highlighted that, because people look at where you are and they just assume, oh, this is easy for her. They don't understand the behind the scenes is what I call to
Yeah.
anything that is posted online, right?
Oh my gosh. And I would say the journey is even more when you publish. There's a whole nother body of work I didn't even think about. It's getting the book out there into the world and like
Mhm.
speaking with people. Like, you don't just put it in Amazon and close your eyes. Like, you're in chapter 2 now of the work.
So true, because then it's like that's when the real work begins, promoting it,
Yeah.
because the book, nobody's going to know, just like your title.
Mm.
Nobody's going to know about it if you don't tell them. So I love that as
Yeah.
well. So this has just been a great
Mm.
conversation. So tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, how
Yeah.
they can get your book, and any final words that of advice that you would give to the listeners today.
Yeah, this is such a pleasure. So More Than My Title is the book behind me. You can go to morethanmytitle.com, follow me on social. I have free handouts. I have a workbook too, because this is just the book that talks about what a hybrid professional is and stories about them in the workforce. But if you want the action steps of how do you find your own hybridity, the workbook does that. And then I do online courses and cohort-based courses where I work live with small groups of people to do this, because it's so much better as a group collaboration.
Mhm.
And yeah, the book is also on Amazon, but More Than My Title is where everything lives.
Awesome. And then, so what final thoughts would you like to leave with
Hmm.
us today?
I think my final thought is you have permission to define and design your professional identity for yourself. And if someone tells you to niche down or just choose one thing, remember you can always combine things together. So think of yourself like a recipe. You are greater than the sum of your parts, but you need to name the kind of delicious food you are, and that's what will set you apart.
Love that. Well, I just want to thank you again. This has been a great conversation. I am loving it. I could be here for hours, but I know, I just get on these tangents. So we definitely will be checking back in with you, because I think this is an important topic, especially now with everyone going through these reinventions in different industries and everything as related to the whatever anybody says it is,
Yeah.
with all the things that really just have happened in a quick amount of time globally that a lot of us are just trying to work through. So it definitely is an important topic, and I encourage anybody listening that anything that was said, if it resonates with you, to reach out to Sarah Beth, because these type of conversations are important, and not only for your communities but for yourself, so that you can grow and you can be a better version of yourself. So we just so much appreciate all your insight and wisdom today.
I appreciate it too. I'm so glad we found each other. Thank you.
Well, you are so welcome. Well, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. And again, just think about the things that were said. Take notes, go back and implement those notes. Don't just talk about what a good conversation was, but find a way that you can take small steps to implement them in your own life so that you can be a better version of you. So we thank you guys all for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye.